Hello, and welcome to the Franciscan Service Network panel. My name is Brother Mike Specht. I'm a Franciscan friar, and like you, only a few years ago, I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to do after college. Where was I supposed to be led? And I participated in one of these volunteer programs here, Franciscan Volunteer Ministry. And here today, we have several Franciscan volunteer programs with us today for you to learn about. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome you into a short prayer of discernment that Francis of Assisi often prayed and that many Franciscan-hearted people do pray daily. So let's begin by centering ourselves and reminding that we're in the presence of God. Most high, glorious God, enlighten the darkness of my heart and give me true faith, certain hope, and perfect charity, sense and knowledge, Lord, that I may know your holy and true command. Again, we welcome you to this special panel where we have, I believe, 6 different Franciscan programs that you can learn more about today. And so I'll start introducing them one by one. First off, I'd like to introduce Margaret.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret McIntyre Stacy, and I'm the program director of the Capuchin Franciscan Volunteer Corps, and we go by CapCorps for short.
Hi, I go by Pat Moran, and I'm the director of the Change of Heart Franciscan Volunteer Program, which is a ministry of the Sisters of St. Francis, and we're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Caroline Stanville. I am the coordinator for Felician Volunteers in Mission. That's a service of the Felician Sisters of North America.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Norton. I'm the program director of Franciscan Mission Service. We have a year-long domestic program as well as a 2-year overseas program.
Hello everyone, I'm Katie Sullivan. I am an alumna and the executive director of the Franciscan Volunteer Ministry.
Hi everyone, my name is Joanna Kahina. I'm the associate director of Francis Corps, and we're located in Syracuse, New York.
Well, thanks again, everybody. It's great to be with you today and to learn more about our programs. So I do have some questions that I think people who are discerning post-grad service may want to know. So I'll first start with Margaret. Really, in your words, really, what is post-grad service?
Great question. What is post-grad service? So post-grad service is most literally an opportunity for full-time service after you graduate from college. Our programs offer opportunities to do that domestically and internationally for various timeframes. A number of us are year-long programs, but there's opportunities to serve for a few months up to a few years. We are all Franciscan programs, so our programs offer faith-based service, which in a nutshell is a gap year or more with a faith, community living, and simplicity component. So it gives you an opportunity to grow professionally, spiritually, and personally. Someone once described a year of service as an AP class in the real world, and it's exactly that. There's a lot of adulting, often in a new city or location, and you get to do that in a supportive environment. You learn so much about communication, taking care of a house, budgeting, things that you like to do professionally, as well as you don't like to do, as well as things that you are good at that you had no idea. And you're doing all of this while you're filling a need that would otherwise go unmet. So post-grad service really is, it's just a great idea and a helpful foundation for the future.
Great, thanks so much for your words. I guess my next question will go to Pat. Really, in your experience, what are some reasons that people choose to do post-grad service after college?
Again, Brother Mike, a good question. Post-grad service, well, our programs are faith-based service. They're not just service, but the faith component is very, very important. And what we find is that we look for young adults, or we look for people that have a heart for service, that have done volunteering in the past and have this desire to serve the poor, the marginalized, people that have a need. And sometimes post-grads come to us for various reasons. And I find sometimes that they come because they are uncertain about their careers and they need a year of discernment with other young adults to have this time that's not academic, that's a year of service and a year of prayer, a year of community, to really share with other young adults and just try to figure out what really their next steps are. Sometimes they're very interested in pursuing work in the nonprofit world, and this is a very good foot in the door. There is a percentage of our young adults who do get offered positions in their nonprofits that they serve. And so it's just really a great way for them to experience, the nonprofit families, the people that they serve, their organizations and how they run, the flexibility within them. And yet, it's just a great way for them to really get to know what it means to serve the people that are poor and marginalized. And sometimes they just want to experience a year of intentional community, develop their spirituality, their relationship with God. And this is a great way to do that in a faith-based volunteer program. So, variety of reasons. And we do ask that question. We try to find out why they're doing this. And I think by the time we've had our due diligence with them, they recognize that, we are looking, and we find that these people are extremely special. And they are a small percentage of young adults that do this. And, we believe that they're really the future, hopefully the future leaders of our country.
Great. Thanks so much, Pat. That's very well said. I guess my next question is going to go to Caroline. People may know the name, but I guess my question is, who is St. Francis? That's part one. And part two is, what does it mean to be a Franciscan program with Franciscan values? So who is this Francis guy, and what does that really mean for your programs?
Okay, thank you for the question. St. Francis, of course, I don't want to go into too much detail about his life, but he was born in the 1180s in Italy, and his father was a cloth merchant. So as was the custom there, he grew up to be a cloth merchant and work in his family business for quite a while. When war broke out in his area of Italy, he joined the armed forces and went to protect Assisi. And when he came back, he was ill. Because he was middle to upper class in his area, had some, I'd say, stereotypes or prejudice against people who were poor or people who were ill. And as he was in his father's shop one day, he had a moment of conversion where he felt pity for someone who was begging for money. And he went to a rundown church to pray and was spoken to by Jesus, who asked him to rebuild his church. So he took that quite literally and began rebuilding San Damiano Church in Assisi, and then realized later that it was the church, the people of the church, the body of Christ that he was to rebuild and reinvigorate. He rejected his riches and his family's riches and decided to live among the poor and serve the poor. And many, many people followed him, began to follow him. They were called brothers, and eventually they did become the Franciscan order. And then there was also women who followed his way of life of poverty. So he's also considered the founder of the Poor Clares, and several other orders have come out of the Franciscan tradition. All of those orders share the same values, more or less, living a gospel way of life. And for St. Francis, that was a life of poverty, both spiritual poverty, total dependence on God, and simplicity of life. and material poverty. He did not want to own anything, and his followers were encouraged to do the same. Fraternitas, or brotherly love and community, is another really big Franciscan value. Care for creation, solidarity and service to the poor, the marginalized, the sick, justice and peace, and challenging the unjust structures of our times. And of course, Franciscan joy, which is part of all of the Franciscan traditions that come from this way of life.
I'm going to jump right in. So I'm going to share a little bit about those values that Caroline mentioned, but how are those values lived out in a Franciscan program? So when you think about, let's start off with maybe poverty. So as Caroline was saying, that is seen as not only looking at kind of our material possessions and really recognizing, well, what do we actually need versus want or desire. So our program participants actually commit to living voluntary poverty. So what does that look like? Really just committing to a monthly stipend. So their basic needs are being met, but they are really focusing on, instead of their material possessions, on relationships. So relationships with God, relationships with others, and relationship with themselves as well. When you look at poverty as a sense of poverty of spirit, that is also a really important one to be thinking about for our program participants. That deep sense of trust and dependence on God and how that approach transforms their life. Because often in the US, we have this mindset of we have to be independent and self-sufficient. But when we flip that upside down and we're looking at, well, wait a second, let's put our trust and dependence in God instead. For solidarity with those on the margins, this is something that our program participants really live out in their ministries and their service sites. So walking with those who are on the margins, that's what Jesus did in his life, and that's what St. Francis did as well. Of looking at those who are suffering, those who are oppressed and forgotten by society, and being with them, and really getting to learn their stories and learn their perspectives. Care for creation is another Franciscan value that we as Franciscan programs want our program participants to live out. And how that is done is through a sense of living with intentionality, living simply, living in a sense of looking at what's those sustainable, environmentally friendly ways of living, being good stewards of God's creation. Not only the animals and the plants and their environment, but also how are we treating each person as well, and that sense of dignity. And to look with wonder and gratitude at that diversity that our Creator has created. For peace and justice, that's one that our programs look at through programming. So each program does different trainings or discussions or reflections based on those themes, and seeing what are those systems in our society, those institutions where these injustices have been coming out of those. How can we unpack those? And how does our Catholic faith, our Franciscan tradition, call us to act in different ways? Franciscan joy is one I love. Every Franciscan you meet, hopefully you get that sense of joy. And again, it's an attitude, it's an approach to life. So it's seeing everything as gift. And if we see everything as gift, hopefully there's that sense of recognizing just how incredible that unconditional love is from God, and that we want to share that with others, and we want to share that joy. And I always like the childlike wonder too, I think is a part of that joy. For gospel living, St. Francis was following in the footsteps of Jesus. And when you really think about Jesus, he's a pretty radical guy when you look at how he lived. Very countercultural approach. And I think all of these different ways of different values you can see through that. And so our program participants are using time of reflection and prayer in their communities to really be thinking like, how am I taking each day as living out the gospel? And community or fraternity. This is one that you'll see in our programs. Each program has what we call intentional community. So you may be living in a house with other volunteers, sharing meals, sharing prayers, reflections. And that is just an incredible way to live life. And you're not only getting this smaller community within your program, but as Caroline was sharing, the Franciscan family has expanded so much and is worldwide. So you could go to all different countries and could find Franciscans there, and you would have that great foundation of these 7 different values that you would be able to connect with.
That's great, Emily. Very well said. Thank you. The next question would be for Katie. We talk about Franciscans and all this stuff. For your programs, what kind of interactions do you have with Franciscans?
So thank you so much, Brother Mike, for that wonderful question. We really appreciate your being with us today too. And the interactions with the Franciscans are really phenomenal. It varies slightly across our programs, but include the same elements. So as you've been hearing, like Francis is very relational, and therefore so too are our Franciscan friars and our Franciscan sisters. These people who have dedicated their lives and vowed their lives in a way of accompanying and walking with everybody they encounter, for they recognize in each person being one family, all being children of God. And so from our friars and sisters, we're able to witness their example and learn from them, as well as be examples for them and inspire them, hopefully, right? Like it's a mutual relationship. And so those interactions are everything from formal occasions of praying together at Mass or an evening prayer or morning prayer, to less formal occasions of sharing a meal together, breaking bread. For Francis, that was hugely significant. And so too it is for our programs and everyone involved in them. We accompany the friars and the sisters in ministries that they have that are also very relational. It's not so much about getting something done, although often many things are happening and being accomplished. It's really about growing in relationship, again, being brothers and sisters. And so we see our brother and sister friars and sisters doing that and modeling that for us. And again, trying to do that with them too. Most of us are sponsored fully by particular Franciscan communities as well. And we have a friar or a sister who accompanies each volunteer community then for times of prayer and retreat throughout the year, or the years of dedication of volunteering. And also then beyond that, people stay in relationship and come back and visit the people that they have come to love in their Franciscan family.
That's great, Katie. And I know in my example, doing one of these programs, that these Franciscan-hearted people aren't only, brothers, priests, and sisters, but people who may not profess the vows, but definitely live the message in the gospel that Francis so indeed was close to him. So it's so expansive.
Such an important point. Thank you.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So with all this talk of friars and sisters and all this stuff, so Joanna, this is for you. This may not be familiar with everybody who's tuning into this call. To do these programs, do you have to be Catholic?
Thanks, Brother Mike. And I love this question because it's actually one that I asked all the programs that I was applying to, given that I was in Catholic when I decided to do a year of post-grad service. So the simple answer is no. You do not have to be Catholic to be part of our programs. The reality, though, is that as faith-based service programs, specifically Catholic ones, The majority of our prospective volunteers and also current volunteers do follow that faith tradition. Yet even within that group, and I see it all the time, there is so much beauty in the different stages that our volunteers find themselves in their faith life. Those who are cradle Catholic, those who have just converted, and those who are anywhere in between. But really, regardless of where you find yourself in that faith journey, and regardless of whether you're Catholic or not, we do ask you to be open and comfortable to participate in things like Katie mentioned, and also Margaret, in prayer, in retreats, in Catholic liturgies like Mass, and of course, in learning more about the Franciscan tradition. These, of course, vary to some extent, depending on the program you decide to apply to. Sometimes programs may ask you to pray 7 times a week. Others may be a little less than that. And again, retreats vary, but there's always that Catholic component to it. And I think one of the added benefits, and just to echo again what Margaret said at the beginning, one of the beautiful parts to doing a faith-based service program is not only are you growing professionally and personally, but also that spiritual growth that comes from living in community, from praying together with your fellow volunteers, and the interaction that you have with the friars and the sisters, which is always such great joy.
Thanks, Joanna. And just to say really quickly, while you don't have to be Catholic and to be part of these programs, I think the message of Francis goes beyond one particular faith tradition. There are people who I know who aren't Catholic, who aren't Christian, who don't really follow a faith, but are really inspired by the life of Francis and the values that he continues to show us today. So it's really the spirituality of Francis and Clare is really inclusive in a lot of different ways. So it's even more the reason to expand on it. So, well, thank you all for your great insights to all your programs and kind of what you offer in various different ways. I know we have some great ideas coming forth from this panel discussion on what could be the future if you're considering discerning with one of these programs. If you do want to inquire more with one or all of these programs, or a combination of any, please go to franciscanservicenetwork.org. That's franciscanservicenetwork.org, and you can hear more about any or all of these programs and get in touch with the representatives here of these service programs. So with that in mind, we started in prayer, and we'll end in a closing prayer to carry us through our time together. Lord, we give thanks for this day and all that it contained. We give special thanks for the ability to discern where we're to be called after college or after wherever we are in life. Keep us ever close to you as we continue to hear your voice working in our hearts. In your name we pray, amen. Again, we give you we thank you for being part of this panel discussion. And if you have any more questions, you want to inquire more about any of these programs, franciscanservicenetwork.org. Thank you, and God bless.